You could say she's like a prairie fire. You could say she's like a... Oh, you could say she's like a prairie fire. A soaring spirit riding on the flames of her desire. If you feel a burden in your soul tonight, prairie fire is the name you'll know her by. Look how you light the midnight sky. Prairie fire, tell us why.
Welcome to the Stock Pavilion here at the University of Illinois. I'm Sarah Edwards. Now we're going to do things a little differently on this edition of Prairie Fire. For the next hour, we're going to introduce you to the art of Deke Weaver and his partner Jennifer Allen. Now they're from here in Champaign-Urbana, and for the past 10 years, they've been creating stage shows that illustrate the plight of endangered animals and species that face extinction as the planet warms. Their last show, which is called Cetacean, which means the whale, happened right here at the Stock Pavilion in September of 2023. And for the next hour, we're going to show you a shortened version of it. So, why spend an hour showing you cetacean? Well, if you've ever seen a whale breach on the surface of the ocean or a skeleton of a whale in a museum, you know how much awe whales can inspire. And whether or not you kind of get the art you're about to see, we hope that Cetacean will help you pause and consider your relationship with not only whales, but with every species on the planet. As the author Rebecca Gigg says in this book, Fathoms, which is so beautifully written, she says, whales can magnify the better urgings of our nature and renew those parts of us that are drawn by wonder to revise our place and our power in the natural world.
Hi, I'm Deke Weaver.
And I'm Jennifer Allen.
We're artists that do a lot of things. I write and perform what I write. I make videos. I'm also a professor at the School of Art and Design at the University of Illinois in Urbana-Champaign.
And I'm a director, choreographer, dancer, and an acupuncturist.
We are partners on stage and off.
Yes, we are.
We want to introduce you to the show you're about to see. It's called Cetacean, the whale.
Cetacea is an ancient Greek word for sea monster, but for us 21st century people, the word is part of taxonomy, the science of naming and classifying all the organisms on Earth.
Like this. For human beings, we're in Animalia for kingdom, Mammalia for class, and Primates for order. For all the whales and dolphins, they're also Animalia and Mammalia for kingdom and class, but their order is Cetacea.
So why use a different word when we could just call the show whale? Hang on, we'll get to it.
But first, a little history. Almost 20 years ago, I was a new professor at the U of I. Jennifer and I moved here from New York City. I was realizing that most of my work had animals in it. One show of mine had a talking pheasant and a hockey coach who got drunk and backed a truck over his puppy by accident. Funny, sad, emotional stuff. But I was also haunted by a lot of what I was reading, like the idea that half the species on the planet would be extinct by the year 2050.
It's horrible, you know? How does anyone sit with that idea?
So I started thinking about a long project, the Unreliable Bestiary. I'd make a performance for every letter of the alphabet, each letter represented by an endangered animal or habitat. At that point, I'd been making solo performances, but with the first bestiary show, Jen and I started collaborating.
Now, just like in a movie where a lot can be conveyed in silence, the dance moments allow a space for the audience to have a different kind of experience inside what's happening in the stories.
The shows would be about the animals, but mostly they'd be about us humans and the animals, how everything's connected. So the animals in these shows almost become canaries in the coal mine.
That sounds so heavy, and it is part of what we do, but we also like to balance that with a sense of humor.
The shows are about the animals, but more and more they're becoming about how hard the natural systems of our planet are struggling. A lot of problems.
Climate change, of course.
But now you're starting to see the term polycrisis.
Global warming.
Deforestation.
Ocean acidification.
Massive freshwater pollution.
And mass extinction.
They're all interconnected.
And those are just the natural systems.
Yeah, if you start stirring in the results of these failing systems, like
Economics,
population,
politics,
migration,
food security.
it starts nasty, multi-pronged, trickle-down situations that get personal.
And it can feel overwhelming.
So, what do?
We make a bunch of funny, sad, absurd performances. Events that gather people together in person. You bring your friends, and maybe you make some new ones.
Maybe put people a tiny bit off balance and let them see things a little differently.
It doesn't always happen, but that's what you hope for.
Monkey was our first show. We performed it in 2009.
Now, Deke and I were the main performers. We made it for the Station Theater in Urbana, Illinois, a 75-seat black box theater.
The next show was Elephant in 2010, a much bigger show.
Much bigger. We made it for the huge stock pavilion at the U of I. We projected video onto 90-foot-long screens. Our production designer made a life-size walking elephant puppet that took 5 people to animate. And dancers filled the space as baby elephants, circus roustabouts, a TV crew.
It was big.
Since Monkey and Elephant, we've made wolf, bear, tiger, and now cetacean. We already made W with wolf, so we couldn't do whale, so we called it cetacean instead.
We make these shows with talented people that we know and trust. As the shows get closer, more people come in. Students, former students, community members, teachers and professors, building sets, props, costumes, puppets, and sometimes performing.
Now, as the scale changes, so does the size of the audience. Some have been really big for hundreds of people, but some are more intimate, like just 12.
For Wolf, we loaded folks onto a couple of buses and took them out to Allerton Park, this tiny patch of old-growth forest. Each bus had rangers who told folks about wolves, taught them how to howl, sang some songs. We got there just as the sun went down.
We told people that we had released a pack of wolves into the park. And as we walked them through the trees, as the woods got dark, dancers dressed as wolves brought the story to life.
A little spooky, but funny.
It all ended up in a beautiful old barn with lots of dance, music, and stories.
So let's talk about cetacean. I started reading about whales just as Tiger was finishing and just as the pandemic was beginning.
This was 3.5 years before we did the show.
During that time, I worked with professors and high school teachers to develop a whale workshop for high school and college students. I went to 45 classes and talked with more than 800 kids about oceans, whales, plastics, and how, even though we're sitting here in the middle of the country, we're connected to the oceans.
Meanwhile, 2 years before the show, I started working with dancers, imagining the world of the show in the stock pavilion, seeing the space serve as both a ship and also the bottom of the sea. We transformed from sailors to fish, sharks to narwhals, and even kelp.
We performed Cetacean in September of 2023.
But the thing about live performance is, when the show is over, it's over.
But we always document it, and this time we collaborated with a cinematography class at the U of I. They shot the show over 4 nights with a bunch of cameras. Then they edited it together.
The full show was 2.5 hours long, but what you're about to see is edited excerpts.
Patches that made up the quilt of the whole show. It won't be the same as seeing it in person, of course, but we hope it'll give you a taste of the experience.
This is Cetacean.
for their singing. When you hear a whale in a movie or on TV, it's going to sound like this. There aren't any other animals in the world that make this kind of sound. This is the song of the male humpback whale. They're one of the big baleen whales, the mysticetes. Not too many of these. Right whales, bowhead whales, blue whales, fin whales, humpbacks, gray whales, a few others, and they're all quite big. See, they find huge schools of fish or krill, scoop them up in their enormous mouths, and squeeze the seawater out through the baleen that acts like a strainer, leaving the whale with a mouth full of protein. Now, some humpbacks hunt like this. 2, 3, 4 of them swim down below a school of fish, way deep down. And they swim in a circle, in a spiral, blowing bubbles. And the bubbles rise, this cylindrical bubble curtain rising to the surface, and the bubbles freak out the fish. The fish will not swim through the bubbles. So this spiraling bubble curtain concentrates the fish, driving them in and up towards the surface, and the whales swim up from below, all together, slamming their huge garage door-sized jaws around the school of fish. And sometimes with this bubble net business, 1 or 2 of those whales will slap their flippers on the surface like a gunshot just above the ball of fish. And the intensity of the sound seems to stun the fish, making the feeding even easier for the whales. But see, the whales slap their flippers at other times too. Moments that don't seem to have anything to do with eating fish. Why are they doing this? Or when they breach, when a whale jumps out of the water like the insurance company? Why do they do that? One theory for why whales breach is that they're trying to scrape the barnacles off of their huge wet bodies. Okay, sure, fine, maybe sounds possible. But maybe a whale leaping out of the water doesn't have anything to do with barnacles. And maybe it doesn't have anything to do with impressing other whales or rage or doing it because other whales are doing it. And maybe it's something we humans have absolutely no ability to understand. You know, like the way we see the world will not allow us to understand why a whale jumps out of the water. Or maybe it doesn't mean anything at all. The sea is full of all kinds of mysteries. Let us go down into the depths. One of the names for the top 200 vertical meters of ocean is the sunlight zone. Let's go down further. From 200 to 1,000 meters, it's getting darker as we go deeper. There's still some light, but it's getting darker and darker all the time. This layer is called, the twilight zone. Now that's 656 to 3,280 feet. Everything below the twilight zone lies in perpetual darkness. And now we used to think that without light, there could be no life. Of course, now we know there's all sorts of life. It's all very, very strange. Well, you know, it's strange to us. But the folks down there, you know, they just live there. Now, from 1,000 meters to 3,000 meters lies the midnight zone. And from 3,000 meters to 6,000 meters lies the abyss. Everything below 6,000 meters, that's 19,385 feet. Everything below that, therein lies the underworld, Hades, the Hadal zone. Now, the deepest recorded dive of a human being unassisted by oxygen wearing fins, 129 meters or 423 feet, still well within the sunlight zone. The world record for a human being sitting still underwater holding their breath, 24 minutes and 37 seconds. I know, it's amazing, right? It's like, even if you're just trying to hold your breath, you know, like you're 7 years old. You're down at the pool or down by the lake or the beach, and you're timing yourself with your friends. Maybe you'll get to 45 seconds, maybe a minute. You can train yourself up. You can teach yourself. You can learn. You can evolve to hold your breath for a full minute and a half, maybe 2, maybe 3. Why don't we try it? Yes. All right. So I'm going to count to 3, And when I get to 3, we're all collectively going to take in a big, huge, deep breath, and we're going to start the clock so you can see how long you're holding your breath, okay? Cool beans? Yes? All right. 1, 2, 3. Hold it. Now, while you hold your breath, I'll have you know that a swimming free diver held their breath for 11 minutes. A sea otter can hold its breath in a dive for over 5 minutes. An emperor penguin for 20. A walrus, 30. An elephant seal can hold its breath for 2 hours as it dives 6,000 feet from the sunlight zone down past the twilight zone into the midnight zone. Anyone still holding their breath? A Cuvier's beaked whale dove 9,800 feet well into the midnight zone. That's just 8 meters above the abyss. This whale was underwater on one breath for 3 hours and 42 minutes.
Here's what's killing whales today: plastic, noise, chemicals, being struck by ships, climate change, getting caught in abandoned fishing gear and rope. Of course, watching sperm whales hunt is not really a thing because that hunt takes place in the midnight zone, 1.5 miles below the surface. And they will eat all kinds of animals: crab, krill, lobster, jellyfish, sea sponges, starfish, sea cucumbers, seabirds, and seals. Aw, come on, folks, they gotta eat. They will also eat wood, tin plates, coconuts, sand, plastic, stones, and fishing gear.
Thank you. Thank you for having me. Thank you. You may have heard of my earlier work with NASA, CIA, Greenpeace, and our attempts to communicate with whales and dolphins. Our unconventional work with cetaceans will serve as a foundation for communicating with extraterrestrial life, should we need to. Interplanetary travel could be part of our future. So let's think about this. If the galaxy is the sea, then planets are islands. You could even think of a lifeboat as a very small island, or the Earth as a lifeboat. Survival on a lifeboat is often determined by your ability to conserve your limited resources and adapt to changing conditions, or what some folks might call the unknown. You see, the purpose of our method is not to dispel the veils of mystery. No, our work seeks to embrace the unknown and difference, to be comfortable with the uncomfortable. Let's start with Moby Dick. Melville's great white whale was a fictional sperm whale, but the story is based on actual events which took place on the whale ship Essex. The great whale, 85 feet long, 80 tons, charged straight into the Essex. The 238-ton ship shook like it had run into a cliff. And then the whale turned round and did it again. The Essex did not survive the punishment. The ship went down. Let's meditate on this moment with Ahab, the tormented, one-legged captain of Melville's novel.
Moby Dick, show us your snowy heart. Rise up now, she sounded ship hoarse. Rise now, ye white whale. Show us your crooked jaw. Show us your wrinkled brow. Rise! Dart the harpoon, the striker whale flies, ignite velocity, the line ran foul. I stopped and cleared him, caught me round the waist, shot me out of the boat. Yeah, the crew knew I was gone as the whale pulled me into the briny depths. Cut off from my last found pride of meanest shipwreck captain. I heard the hammer and the crackling keel, the last billows of my foregone life. My topmost great, my topmost grief, oh lonely death, oh lonely life. Da 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 da.
And you? Seabreeze?
Gonna change it up. Give me a salty dog.
Coming up. Couple of narwhals swim into a bar. It's their day off. What else are they gonna do? One says to the other,
Hey, what's a pirate's favorite letter?
I don't know. Why don't you tell me?
Well, you would think that it would be R, but actually it is P,
And why would that be?
because a P is an R that is missing a leg.
I see.
Pirate walks into a bar. He's got a big ship's steering wheel sticking out of his pants. The bartender says, my friend, you got a steering wheel sticking out of your pants. And the pirate says, avast, this wheel is driving me nuts. Now, you can't say that they sprang into action. They didn't have enough energy to spring. The young man remembered crouching to pick up his end of the kayak, fighting this dizzy blackout head rush from not eating in 3 days, not standing in just as many. Usually it took them 30 minutes to pack the boat. That day it took them an hour and a half. And during that time, the sky had got very, very dark. But the wind wasn't so bad, and there wasn't too much lightning. Yes, they were going. So they got in the boats. They come across out of the cove. They come around the point, and bad idea. Jesus. He remembered trying to keep the bow headed into the waves. Don't roll. Don't get broadsided. He remembered whitewater, cresting waves, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 feet high. He remembered dark sky, thunder, everybody shouting, lightning. Someone's paddle snapped in half. Don't panic. Whitewater, green water, black water. Don't panic. Huge waves, howling wind, black sky. Everyone's shouting, lightning, thunder. Not crossing, not crossing. Go back in, back to shore.
They made it to a strip of beach with only enough room for one small tent and a massive pile of tangled, washed-up trees. The 6 kayakers huddled together in the small tent 36 hours, listening to the storm. They had adapted to changing conditions, but conditions could have been much worse. A search boat picked them up and fed them hot tea and soggy sandwiches.
This Prince William Sound storm was in 1980. In 1989, supertanker Exxon Valdez spilled 11 million gallons of oil into Prince William Sound after running aground. Today, 34 years later, you can still stick a shovel in the beach and find a layer of black oil. This oil spill killed billions of salmon eggs, hundreds and thousands of seabirds, thousands of otters and seals, and 9 killer whales.
In the summer of 2019, there was a huge crash of the salmon population. There were empty streams. Bears were starving. Whales, bears, fish, birds, even wolves, they all eat salmon. Without salmon, the Pacific Northwest Oceanic Rainforest system stops. The engine stops.
A whale scientist wrote, killer whales are culturally conservative, meaning they are not flexible. Orcas teach each other what's good to eat and how to catch it. They share food with each other. If it's not shared, they won't touch it.
Some orca families will only eat other sea mammals like seal and otter. Some will only eat other whales. Some orca families only eat salmon. There are very different strategies for hunting seal and hunting fish.
And if you have an endless supply of salmon, like centuries and centuries of endless salmon, why would you eat anything else?
So if the world is changing and you can't evolve,
If you can't change your behavior,
because you're culturally conservative, you might not live for very long.
The girl was born as the mother died, so it was just father and daughter. Girl was a bit of a tomboy. She was beautiful, she was proud. Fellas started coming around. She wasn't interested at all. Good-looking, charming, earnest, hard-working boys from good families. She could care less. She sat on the beach making elaborate braids of kelp. She wrapped the kelp around bits of bone and bring these treasures to her father. She was getting older. Her dad was getting nervous. He said, "Daughter, it seems your life will be lonely." She said, "Papa, I don't care. You know how strong I am." He said, "Yes, I do, but even so, one day you might need this." And he handed her a key made of stone. He said, "This is the key to the floor of the world." She put the key in her pocket. She kissed him on the cheek. She said, "Don't worry, Papa. I'm strong. I'm life." So they lived out their days. But of course, things change. So one day, a young man came to talk with the girl. He had a nice smile. She liked to watch his hands. Told her about where he came from, how the pillows and couches were covered with reindeer and polar bear fur, very soft, comfortable, warm. He told her about how the lamps were always filled with oil and the pots with meat. He said, "Maybe I could show you sometime." She didn't say anything, but she thought to herself, "Yeah, I'd like that." Well, that young man showed up on the beach every day for a month. Every morning, there he was, standing on the beach with 2 mugs of hot chowder, one for him, one for her. They'd walk and sip their soup. He'd talk, she'd listen. And then one day, He started to listen, and she started to talk. Well, she told him everything. Everything she wanted to do, everything she'd ever hoped for, everything she'd ever dreamed of. She thought about these things all the time, but she'd never told anybody. Her dad was too busy. The other girls in the village were mean or stupid or both. And of course, the boys were hopeless. Sometimes she'd say, oh my gosh, I've been talking. You sure you want to hear all this? And the charming young man would say, of course. It's fascinating. Don't stop. And her face would explode into a huge smile. She wanted him to know everything. So one day, she hugged him. And then, one day, well, she kissed him. Well, the very next day, the handsome young man showed up on the beach with 3 mugs of soup. He said, could I speak with your father? The girl said, of course. She ran up the bluff to her father, who sat looking out to sea. She said, please, father, come with me. My young man would like to have a word. The father kept a straight face, but inside he was bursting with excitement. Could this be the day? Well, it turned out that it was. The young man gave a mug of chowder to the daughter, one to the father, and he suddenly became quite formal. He bowed and swept his hand over the beach. He said, gracious father, I humbly ask for your daughter's hand in marriage. I will be good to her. I will be true. I am certain we are meant to be together, but if I do not have your consent, I will leave you in peace and never darken your door again. Well, the father smiled to himself. Come on, I mean, his daughter had said no to every single boy who had ever courted her. He looked at her out of the corner of his eye and found her staring right back at him with a huge smile. He said, daughter, do you like this idea? And she hugged him, whispering, yes, Papa, yes. With tears in their eyes, father and daughter nodded their consent. Excellent, said the young man. But before we go any further, I should let you know what you're getting into. Full disclosure sort of thing. So he turned his back to the daughter and her grateful father. He took off his jacket. He stepped out of his boots. And when he turned back around, he had become a huge seabird. His beak was sharp. His eyes were bright. His magnificent feathers sparkled in the sun. He said, I didn't want to frighten you, but now you should know. I am the prince of the seabirds. I offer you my world, my heart, and my life. Come, be by my side. Well, the young woman didn't hesitate. Yes, she thought to herself, 1,000 times, yes. She climbed on the back of her husband, and the seabird prince launched into the sky. The father crouched, shielding his eyes from the sun, as the huge bird carried his daughter off the beach, out across the sea, to her new home. A year went by. Turns out things weren't exactly as the seabird prince had promised. There was not a single fur-lined pillow, not a single cozy couch. They never had oil in their lamps. They never had meat in their pots. The young woman's bed was rough walrus hide. She covered herself with nasty old fish skins and long, gnarled ropes of kelp. The comfortable palace the seabird prince had promised turned out to be a ragged nest of bones perched high on the edge of a cliff in the middle of the ocean, the island kingdom of seabirds. When the wind wasn't howling, all she could hear was millions of birds incessantly arguing, gossiping, and complaining to each other. I mean, she couldn't believe it. The guy seemed so nice. He brought her soup. He was sweet to her dad. He listened to her. And he was a prince. God! She was pissed. She thought to herself, when I get off this island, I will never trust a man, never again. And so she made a plan. Whenever the prince was gone, let's be honest, he was always gone. Off to parties, the royal court, drinking, making his big bird decisions. Whenever the prince was gone, she would make a braid of kelp, wrap it around a bit of bone from her horrible nest, and throw it into the sea. She did this every day. And if a butterfly came by, or a tiny little bird, she'd whisper to them, "Find my father. Tell him to come. Thank you, little one. Go." And so one day, on a beach far from the island of seabirds, the young woman's father found a beautiful braid of kelp. And what do you know? Just as he bent down to pick up that kelp, a butterfly landed on his left shoulder, a tiny little bird on his right, both of them whispering to him, "Your daughter is in danger. Go, find her." So he did. He got in his boat. He paddled for days. And finally, he came to the island of seabirds. He looked high on the cliff, and there she was. He called, "Sweetie, I'm here." She looked out over the edge of her nest, down below at her papa, bobbing at sea in his tiny boat. He climbed up the cliff, hauled himself into the nest. Oh, his daughter was pale, emaciated. Her beautiful hair was filthy, matted, tangled in knots, but her eyes were furious. She hissed to her father, "Take me away from here." Suddenly, the seabird prince came home, surprised to find a man in his nest. The huge bird tried to charm his way out of it. "Oh, what a wonderful surprise. Welcome to our home." It's too much for the woman. "Liar! You are a horrible liar!" She lunged at the bird. The bird prince dodged, slapped her to the ground with a huge wing, stood on her head, pressing her face into the stony cliff with his big, webbed foot. The seabird prince looked down on his human wife, writhing under his weight. And in that moment, the young woman's father could see contempt and disgust in the eyes of the prince, even a kind of grim pleasure. Now, truth be told, when the father found that beautiful braid of kelp, you know, when the butterfly was whispering, the tiny little bird was cheeping, he had a moment of doubt. His daughter had always been a pain in the ass. I mean, sure, she was brilliant and beautiful, but so proud, like she was better than everyone else. He had a moment of thinking of, you know what, my haughty daughter? Not my problem. You ignored all the boys for years. This is the nest you built. Now you got to sleep in it. But the butterfly kept whispering. Tiny little bird kept cheeping. So he got in that boat. He paddled for days. And now he could see the truth for himself. The seabird prince was arrogant and terrible. He could see it in a moment. Well, seeing his daughter's face pressed down into a filthy nest of bones by the smirking, arrogant seabird prince, that was all the father needed. With one motion, he scooped up a rock and smashed the head of the prince. He hammered the bird's head once, twice, and the prince was dead. Father and daughter climbed down the face of the cliff. They got in their boat, and they set off to sea, back home. Now, you would hope that they would live happily ever after. But this isn't that kind of story. When all the birds on the island realized their prince had been killed, they cried like seabirds still cry today. Filled with grief, the millions of birds kettled into the air, desperate for revenge. They blackened the sky, churning the sea with their anger, grinding the ocean into the darkest of storms. Father and daughter climbed the mountainous black and green waves in their tiny boat. They'd never seen such fury. The seabirds found the boat, diving at father and daughter, crying, "Betrayal! Death to the human princess! Give her to us, old man!" The father protected his face from the birds as they attacked him, their beaks ripping his bald head into a mass of bloody meat. The young woman stood up in the boat, swinging her paddle at the birds, knocking them out of the sky. The father thought to himself, "She'll swamp the boat. She'll kill us both. Give her to us! Give her to us!" screamed the birds. So he did. He shoved his daughter overboard. The birds cried, "Yes!" She grabbed the gunwale of the boat, screaming, "Father, help me!" She tried to pull herself back in, but he wouldn't have it. With his sharpest knife, he cut off the tips of her fingers. "Ha ha!" screamed the birds. The eyes of father and daughter locked as she slipped off the hull. She lunged once again, grabbing the edge of the boat with bloody hands. But there he was, cutting off her fingers at the knuckles. As she slid below the surface, she thought to herself, "Oh, you fool. He's just like all the rest." She lunged one last frantic time, and there he was, slicing off her hands at the wrists. As the sea took her, the seabird screamed, "Down she goes! Death and death and death to her!" When the woman didn't come back to the surface, the storm cleared, the sea calmed. Satisfied, the seabirds flew back to their island kingdom, where the wind at his back, the sun shining on his bloody head. The father paddled home. He thought to himself, I should have done that years ago. Meanwhile, down below the surface of the slowly settling waves, the woman sank to the bottom of the sea. And as she sank, she made a vow. I will not be tamed. I will not be broken. I am life. And as she made her vow, the tips of her fingers swam away and became all the whales of the ocean. And as she swore her bitter revenge, her knuckle bones dove deep and became all the seals of the sea. And as she caressed her deadly hatred, Her stumpy hands became the walruses and sea lions. And as she nursed her rage, pacing back and forth on the bottom of the deep, dark ocean, she made the world a very different place. Anybody home? It's one of your dolphins, Mom. Quick visit. Brought you something. Now it's pitch black, but I got that echolocation sound thing, right? So I couldn't see anything, but I could hear everything crystal clear, and covering every inch, every 3, 4, 40 foot deep over the mother's living room, over the entire bottom of the sea was, oh great, a list. Covering the bottom of the sea. Ready? Here we go. Ice cream tubs, solo cups, water bottles, packing tape, bubble wrap, garbage bags, life-size plastic crucifixes, PCBs, styrofoam coolers, milk jugs, drift nets, flip-flops, fish traps, cell phones, laptops, blenders, grocery bags, endocrine disruptors, synthetic burlap, forever chemicals, yes, PFAS, synthetic microplastics, Barbie dolls, toothbrushes, insulation, floss picks, flotation devices, flame retardant, persistent organic pollutants, yes, that's right, POPs, abandoned 28-mile long lines, industrial sludge, Mickey, Donald, Goofy, wow, it just goes on. Yeah, it goes on for a long time. Thanks. The mystery that lies at the bottom of the sea is all your human garbage, your human fear, your hope, your dreams, your shadow. And there she was, the mother of the sea, all sprawled out on a lazy boy. Was she asleep? No. Was she awake? Sure. I said, "Most noble mother, I bring mittens."
Shut up! It's my program.
So I shut up. The mother, once beautiful and proud, had let herself go. And as she'd been known to say on other less peaceful days,
You ever try to do your hair with no hands? You ever try that?
no,
No?
nope.
Didn't think so. And what about makeup? You ever try to clean up nice with all those eensy baby brushes and pads and tubes and little tiny dishes of ointment with no hands?
No, nope.
And what about earrings? You want to talk about earrings? Oh, sure. Learn to do it with your feet. Sure, why not? My back went out 1,000 years ago. Let me see you put on some earrings with your feet and a bad back. Go ahead, let me see it, do it.
Oh, Mom.
Don't call me that. Look, you are catching me on a good day. I might even like you, and believe me, I don't like folks.
So what would you like me to call you?
I don't want you to call me anything. I don't want to talk to you. I don't want to talk to anyone.
Okay. Well, I'll just leave these mittens here, and I'm gonna go.
What is with the mittens?
Well, I think they'd fit. They're your color, and I think they're all yours.
My color? How do you know?
Well, my mom does people's seasons, color analysis, you know.
Well, You are right. That red is my kind of mitten.
Oh, well, let's try them on. Just, just for fun. Just, Oh, yeah. Ah, yeah. They look good. Yeah. Oh, there you go. What do you think?
Stop!
Are you all right?
Ah, please. Stop. They used to think I was bottomless, mysterious, violent, beautiful, endless, whatever. And now, they fly across me in a couple of hours. They measure me, they predict me like I'm getting smaller and smaller, and I'll be if they don't keep pissing me off. And so I give it to them. Hurricane, tsunami, rogue wave, atmospheric river, a decade of drought, and do they pay any attention? No. No, they've got no vision, no patience, no goddamn sense of memory and empathy. Empathy, you think you understand me? No, you don't. You think you've got it all figured out. Clearly, you don't. You think you've got me all sorted, all worked out. Ha, absolutely not. I am ocean, earth, sky, stars, the future, the past, now, never, always. That's me. And it is just so obvious. Wake up! I am life. I will not be tamed. I will not be broken. You choke me, and I will bury you. You leave filth, colossal, endless waves of filth will be yours. Your old ones thought about 7 generations, and you fools can't think about 7 days. You think the world was born in 7 days? Then surely it can die in just as many. You have everything you need. And yet you poison the well, you salt the field, you burn the forests. Please, my children, listen. Most vessels are equipped with everything you need. With a little common sense, you take care of her, she takes care of you. Ships are built for buoyancy. The most compromised vessels can be salvaged. Your ability to conserve resources and adapt to changing conditions, that's the measure of your success. Mittens. Yes, I haven't thought about this. Yes, I haven't thought about this for a very long time. The key to the floor of the world. I can hold it now. And to get your attention, I'm going to use this key. It's going to prove to be quite painful for you, stupid little. I'm going to use this key to open the door, the floor of the world, the door to the stars. I'm going to use this key and release the Kraken, Leviathan, Afgufa, Galactic Whale, all of them. And I'm going to let them remind you of what you've got. Hope, fear, patience, endurance, strength, shadow, light, the sky, the sun, the moon, the stars, the clouds, the storm, the wind, the rain, the snow, the ice, the whales, the animals, the fish, the birds, the frogs, the bugs, the humans, the mountains, the valleys, the earth, the sand, the desert, the hills, the islands, the forests, The trees, the grasses, the prairie, the swamps, the lakes, the rivers, the beaches, the tides, the ocean, the sea, the sea, the sea, the sea, the sea.
The weary night never worries me, but the hardest time in a sailor's day is to watch the sun as it dies away. Here's one more day on the great funnel line. The finest ship that sailed the sea is still a prison for the likes of me. But give me wings like Noah's dove, I'd fly above her to the girl I love. Here's one more day on the great funnel line. Oh Lord, if dreams were only real, I'd have my hands on that wooden wheel, and with all my heart I'd turn around and tell the boys that we're homeward bound. Here's one more day on the great funnel line. I'll pass the time like some machine until blue water turns to green. Then I'll dance on